Oh, we've got people live here and online.
Good evening, folks. I'm Melissa Schwartz. I'm the gifted chair for the United Parent Council, and we have people joining us online as well. That's why Karen's going to stand at the side and not meander across. But welcome tonight. How many of you know what United Parent Council is? Okay, everybody here. A couple of people don't. A couple of you don't know? Yes, no, yes. United Parent Council is, so our schools have PTOs and PTAs. And in this district, we have 43 schools. So we have representatives from each of those PTOs and PTAs, if the schools have them, and they go to a level called the United Parent Council, where they work at a district level to work on things all across the district, which is why we get to collaborate with gifted, immersion, with our special education departments, and try and find things that help students, not just at one school, but all throughout the entire district. So tonight we bring you another one of our gifted programs. If you have not seen our YouTube channel, I recommend you go there. We have an entire plethora of videos over the past 8 years that have been recorded and are on there. So that is on youtube.com. Easy to find. It's PV, and I think there's a blank space. I think it's PV space UPC, or you can try PV UPC and look for that. There's actually in there is a separate section that is all of our gifted content. So we have a separate place to find all of that. So let's hear about our gifted programs. This is Karen Brown, who is our director of gifted programming.
Good evening. So thank you so much for coming. I have lots and lots of things I want to share with you. So as I'm going through this, if you have questions or you think, wait a minute, what did you just say? Please don't hesitate to stop me. Like I said, I have lots of things I want to share, but I want to make sure that you're understanding what we're talking about. So I want to explain the reason for the frames. We started this year in Gifted with the idea that we were going to frame our year, and we were going to frame it with some very important words. We were going to frame it with attention and balance. We were going to frame it with resiliency and presence. And we worked hard all year to frame everything that we did with those words. And we're continuing, and that's how we plan to end our year. Every year we try to think about, what do we need for our kids? What do they need? And that's what we came up with for this particular year. So welcome to the world of a gifted learner. For some of you, this is the first time that you maybe had an identified gifted learner. And all of a sudden someone says to you, oh, by the way, your child is gifted. Okay, what does that mean? Now what do I do? I remember when my oldest son was identified as gifted, I kind of felt stupid because they acted like I should know what to do with him. I still didn't know I still don't know what to do with him. And he's 34 years old. These individuals see the world very differently. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. How do we build programming to support that? So I want to welcome you to Paradise, because in Paradise, we serve 13% of the district's population. That's a lot of gifted kids. Close to 3,500 gifted students if we count the ones that we most recently identified. We do have a gifted specialist at every elementary campus. We have 2 middle school programs that are fully endorsed gifted specialists. We have gifted liaisons at every middle school and at every high school. In Gifted, in Arizona, we function under what's known as an unfunded mandate. If you don't know what that is, that means that the state says you will provide gifted education, but we're not going to pay for it. So that means that as a district, it comes out of the district budget. We are very blessed in Paradise because our district has agreed that this is important and we are going to fund it, which is why we have the types of programming that we do. So a few myths that I want to talk about with you, because these are the things that we hear all the time in gifted education. Things like gifted kids don't need help. They'll be fine on their own. Well, there isn't any research to support that. And in fact, the research says exactly the opposite. Teachers challenge all students. So gifted kids are fine in a gen ed classroom. Well, I have to be honest with you. I was in a classroom for many years before I got into gifted. And even when I was a gifted teacher, I taught in a gen ed classroom. And if I have learners in my classroom who are gifted, identified, and functioning here, and I have learners in my classroom who are really struggling, in all honesty, gets your attention. Not this child. This one does, because this child is sinking. That's just reality. There isn't a way for teachers to differentiate for that huge range, which is why we cluster group. Gifted students are needed as role models in the classroom. Have you met a gifted kid? Many times they're not the best role models because they don't learn in the same way. They see things and make connections that other kids don't make. They're not always the best role models for that traditional learner. All children are gifted. No, all children are gifts. Not all children are gifted. Gifted education programs are elitist. So let me ask you this. If we think about that beautiful bell curve that we talk about all the time, and 100 being the middle, that's the average IQ. No one questions if you have a learner with a 70 IQ. No one questions that that learner needs a specialized educational environment. Nobody questions that. And yet if we go to the other end, and I say that child who has a 130 IQ, that's a gifted learner. And I say, well, they also need a specialized learning environment. Well, no, that's elitist. No, it isn't. It's recognizing that these are two very different learners, both of which require a specialized learning environment if they're going to reach their potential. That student can't be gifted. He's not getting good grades. Well, giftedness and academic achievement don't always go hand in hand. I'll let you know that my oldest son graduated from high school with a beautiful C average. Of course, he aced his SATs and he aced his ACTs and was taking calculus at a very young age, but he didn't do homework. And teachers graded homework. And his answer to me when I said, well, honey, the teacher grades the homework was, that's her problem, Mom, not mine. See, that's a gifted kid. So, doesn't have anything to do with their grades. This child can't be gifted. He has a disability. Really? So he can't have ADHD and be gifted? He can't have a learning disability and be gifted? He can't. Well, yeah, he can. Having a disability doesn't have anything to do with being gifted. And I can have both. And we have many, many learners in this district who have both. Gifted education is federally and state funded. Some places, gifted education is not federally funded. It is not part of the Special Education Act. In some states elect to put it under the special education umbrella, which gets it funding from a state level. We are not in a state that does that. We are in a state that has a mandate that says you will do, but we won't pay. So that means that as a district, we have to come up with the funds to ensure that these learners get what they want and what they need. So what does it mean to be gifted? Well, it means that I fall here in that upper 8% of the world's population. And if I fall in the top 3% of that 8%, then I'm way over here. I'm profoundly gifted. I tell kids, those are the scary gifted ones. Because I can't even begin to keep up with you. So that's what we're talking about. But I'm not talking about a child who is necessarily smarter than any other child. I'm talking about a child whose brain is processing differently. And because the brain is processing differently, they learn more quickly. They retain information. They retrieve information much faster. They forget nothing, which as a parent works against you. Just get over it and just go with it. Because they will say to you, well, Mom, 6 months ago on Tuesday on our way home from the school, you said, and then tell you exactly what you told them 6 months ago. Darn. Well, things have changed, honey. We're not going to be able to do that. But you said, careful what you say. It could come back to bite you. So, when we think about gifted kids, and then we think about bright children, these are two different. This child is a good school child. This child is a gifted child, and they may or may not be a good school child. So, these are the kids that ask the questions. These are the kids that are highly curious. They have wild and crazy ideas about things. These are the kids who play around and yet can score on a test. These are the kids that the teacher is absolutely positive they're not listening, and when she calls on them, they can spit the answer back to her. These are the kids who aren't just at the top of the group, they're beyond the group. These are the kids that really need 1 to 2 repetitions. In a typical classroom, learners get 12 to 15 touches on material. A lot of different ways, but 12 to 15 times material is hit for that learner to get mastery. That gifted learner got it after the second time. So what is he or she doing when the class is on time number 9? Any ideas? Well, if you were lucky, the child pulled out a book. I was not lucky. They're turned around in their seat. They're poking the person next to them. They're talking. They're building a paper airplane and then shooting it across the room to see if it worked. Because you see, they're done. I got it. Move on. These are kids who oftentimes initiate projects. They love projects. Do you see anywhere on that list where it says they complete projects? No. You see, because for a gifted learner, I start a project to get an answer. And once I have that answer, I'm done. I got the answer I was looking for. And when you try to explain to them, yes, but your teacher needs you to complete the project. Why? I got the answer I was looking for. So that's something that we have to deal with. These kids are very intense. Nothing rolls off their back. They are warriors. They're concerned about the world. Notice right here it says enjoys learning. Notice it doesn't say enjoys school. Stanford University many years ago did a study where they interviewed gifted kids from second graders all the way up through high school and college in some instances. And they asked them a series of questions. The interviewer actually sat with them and asked them a series of questions. And with the younger children, one of the things that they asked was, do you enjoy school? And they got answers like, I really like my teacher. And the interviewer said, honey, I didn't ask you that. I said, do you enjoy school? I like being with my friends. I didn't ask you that. So do you enjoy school? And basically what came out of the interviews was, I enjoy learning. But sadly, they didn't equate learning and school together. That's a problem. I love to learn, but I don't see school as a place where I learn necessarily. They thrive on complexity. The more complex, the better, the happier they are. And that last one, they're highly critical. They're highly critical of themselves. Lots of negative self-talk with these kids. But they can also be highly critical of others because I don't understand what you don't understand, which is one reason why they make lousy tutors. And one reason why we should never use them in a classroom to help other kids. Because when you use a gifted kid for that reason, here's what happens. Here, just the answer is 3. Put 3 right here. Put 3. Just 3 right here. Put 3. You see, that gifted learner doesn't have any idea what that child doesn't understand. Because it is so obvious to them that they aren't able to walk them through that process. They're not good tutors. So all learners, even the gifted ones, deserve that safe and flexible learning environment, deserve a focus on social emotional to make sure that I'm okay here as well as here. And learning experiences that are paced in response to my individual need. Pace is big for these kids. It's got to come at me fast or you're not going to hold my attention. Needs to come at me quickly. When we look at the standards, we are responsible and gifted for teaching the Arizona State standards, just like every other teacher is responsible for. But in addition to those standards, we are also responsible for the National Association of Gifted Standards. Those professional standards we are also accountable for. We have to make sure that those programming standards are being seen in our classrooms, that we are designing instruction that addresses those programming standards, as well as our state standards. So let's talk for just a little bit about that continuum of services, because if you've been in Paradise Valley for very long, you probably have heard, well, their gifted services are on a continuum. And I have a lot of parents who will call and say, what does that mean? We'll talk about it right now. So that means that the bottom of that continuum is what every gifted learner gets. Every gifted learner is placed into a cluster classroom if they are in kindergarten, first, second, third, and sometimes fourth grade. And that cluster learning environment is an environment which allows these learners the opportunity to live in two worlds. They have their gifted group, and then they're also with typical peers, but they have a teacher who has been trained in how to differentiate instruction. When they get into fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, we recognize that these learners maybe don't have, they need more acceleration, they need more. And that's where that gifted specialist comes in. We're going to talk specifically about cluster and specifically about content replacement in just a minute. So that's where we start, that cluster grouping model. We have preschool programs. We identify preschoolers at the 90th percentile. The state of Arizona says the 97th percentile is an identification of a gifted learner, but we recognize that I'm testing 3.5-year-olds. So we identify for that program at the 90th percentile. Content replacement in reading and math, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. The majority, the vast majority of our gifted learners are serviced in those programs. But in Paradise, we also recognize that we do have a small group of gifted learners that's not enough for. They need more. They need a faster pace. They need differentiated curriculum that is more than what they can get in that cluster room. That is more than what that content replacement teacher can provide. And so we have an application that allows us to put students in the comprehensive gifted classrooms. Those classrooms are offered at multiple sites. Some of them are multi-age, some of them are single grade, but that allows us to provide that radical acceleration. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. When we head to middle school, we have a variety of options. We have Journey, we have the Digital Learning Center, and we also have the Honors Academies at Desert Shadows Middle School. And then we move on up and we have Crest and the DAPS program in high school. We also have AP courses at every one of our high schools, which for many gifted kids, that's where they want to go. Just send me the AP route. I'm a drama person. I want to go and do drama and experience that, but I still need AP classes. Okay, every high school is going to offer that. All right. So our goal is to make sure that every one of our gifted kids is graduate ready. That they have the opportunity to fulfill all of those pieces because we've taken the time to make sure that they are going to be successful. I want every one of them to be that graduate, to be ready for that. When we think about what does it take for a gifted kid to be successful, we have to focus not only on critical thinking, but we also have to focus on creative thinking. because they float between those two worlds. They float back and forth beautifully. And I have to remember that critical thinking has to be embedded into all the different aspects of the curriculum for them, as does creative thinking. I need them to float easily between those two worlds. And I need an inquiry-based learning environment. A learning environment that is questioning and pushes them to not only design the question themselves in some instances, but to figure out, how do I answer this question? And there are times when your gifted learner will come home and say things like, my teacher won't answer me. They won't give, you're right. She just asks me another question. Because I don't want them to see their teachers as fountains of knowledge, that all they have to do is go up and tap. I want them to understand that figuring out the question, figuring out how I find the answer is as important as solving the task. Do you know how to get there? So when we think about cluster, we think about three words. We think about enrichment, enhancement, and mild acceleration. Enrichment says that I'm going to provide you a wealth of opportunities for you to explore. Enhancement says I'm going to change the complexity of the task you're going to be given. And if I change the complexity of the task, that will ignite your brain and get you excited about what you're doing. And then I may have some mild acceleration. But the focus of what I'm going to do in that cluster classroom lies on that enhancement and enrichment piece. We have trained teachers in those classrooms, teachers who understand not just the academics of a gifted learner, but also that social emotional piece of a gifted learner. Remember, I said nothing rolls off the back of a gifted kid. Nope. These kids come to us very perfectionistic sometimes. And then there are times when they would rather not attempt a task than run the risk of being wrong. Because being wrong is frightening. Because you see, for a lot of gifted kids, they've grown up hearing how smart they are, how good they are at doing things. And when you're the gifted kid who's been in a classroom and you've always known the answer, your hand is always up. You always know the answer. You don't know how you know the answer. You just do. You just do. And you get to a point where you don't know the answer. But you see, I always know the answer. What's going on in your stomach when you're at that point of realizing that you don't know the answer right now? Anybody getting that sick feeling? We call it learning butterflies if you're a first or second grader. We talk a lot about learning butterflies. It's that little fluttery feeling in your stomach that you're not really sure if you might be sick. Hold on to that butterfly. He's very important and you need him because without him, you can't learn. With older kids, we talk about disequilibrium. You're in a state of disequilibrium. They love that word. Mrs. Brown, I am in a state of disequilibrium. Awesome. You know what that means? Yeah, it means I'm learning. Yeah, it means you're learning. It's that in between. It's that state of not knowing. Kids don't like that state because it pushes them out of their comfort zone. And if most of us are honest, we would admit that we don't like being out of our comfort zone. That's why they call it a comfort zone. But you see, learning doesn't occur in your comfort zone. Learning occurs when you step outside your comfort zone. So sometimes you're going to see teachers who push, drag, shove kids out of their comfort zones. Because that's how we learn. We learn when we have to persevere. I talk with parents who say, my child doesn't have perseverance. Okay, how do you learn to persevere? By having to. Yeah, that's how you learn perseverance. So that means that that child has to be placed in a situation where they don't know, so they can learn to persevere through the challenge. But if I'm never placed in that situation, of course I don't have perseverance. I've never had to. So understanding who they are and who they're dealing with is one of the most important pieces in allowing them to be successful in our classrooms. And that's why we spend so much time working with our teachers. It's why, as a district, we have a cluster coach. That's her job, to work with cluster teachers. It's why cluster teachers have monthly meetings with gifted specialists on their campus. It's why we provide constant training for teachers, because they have to understand who these kids are. In a cluster classroom, you're going to be using district curriculum with differentiated learning opportunities, and they're going to be grouped with like-minded peers. I can't overemphasize the value of like-minded peers. Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit on what differentiated learning opportunities actually means?
So basically what I'm going to do is I'm not necessarily going to change the book. So I'm not going to necessarily put them in a different math book. I'm going to change the complexity of the task that they do. So you might have some type of a science activity where they've been learning about polar animals or some type of animals, and they've been learning about animal habitats. And the teacher is going to give them, she's got one group that she's going to be handing a chart, and the animals that they worked on are listed on the chart, and the elements of habitat are across the top. And there might even be a word bank at the bottom, and the kids take that and they plug in the information. And she's going to have another group of learners that are going to get that, what looks like that same chart, except that they're going to choose their animals. She's raising the complexity for them. And she might have another group that she says, you know what, we've learned about 10 different animals. I'd like you to choose 4 of them. And I want you to create a graphic that shows me how you would contrast and compare the habitats of these animals. Well, can I make you a chart? Good, if you want to. Could I make you like a Venn diagram with multiple? You could if you want to. She's going to give them that opportunity. I'm going to change the complexity of what I ask them to do. Many times in reading, I can change the complexity simply by raising the readability. So I'm going to give them a text that has a higher readability. That's going to offer them that differentiated learning opportunity. In math, I might change the way I address the math problem. So instead of giving them 15 math problems that they need to complete for me, I might give them a sheet that has 15 math problems on it, but they've all been solved. And I'm going to say to my learners, you know, some of these are wrong. How many of them are wrong? That's the problem. I don't know. Well, are they all wrong? I don't know. Some of them are. Was one of them wrong? I don't know. Here's your task. I need you to tell me which ones are wrong. I need you to correct them for me. But the most important piece of information I need is, what was the mathematical misunderstanding that the learner had? Okay, Miss Brown. And they start working. And all of a sudden you'll hear one of them say, guys, there's 5. There's 5 that are wrong. And somebody will say, I got 7. Wait, you got 7? I only found 5. And they start having that discourse and that communication back and forth and that error analysis. Because that lets me as a teacher know, do they really understand what they're doing, or have they learned a rote algorithm? Because unfortunately, gifted kids can learn an algorithm faster than anybody on the planet. They can learn to regroup by watching someone, but they don't necessarily understand the mathematical frameworks that go with it. So differentiated learning opportunities can be a variety of different things in a variety of different subjects. It can be just questioning, just the questioning that the teacher asks. So there's a lot of different ways, really dependent on the learner, dependent on the classroom, the age of the learners, lots of different ways. Does that help answer your questions?
Yes.
Okay. So when we start getting to that 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, now in the classroom, it can oftentimes become very difficult to provide the level of acceleration that these learners need. And so that's why at this point we've said, okay, Now we need to move from that very mild acceleration to more of a moderate acceleration where we're going to allow them to work a year above grade level. So I'm still going to provide that enrichment. I'm still going to provide that enhancement, but I'm going to up the level of acceleration for them because in most instances it's needed. Again, this is taught by a gifted specialist. It is a replacement of the class content. She is their teacher of record. So that means she sees them every single day. They go to her for reading instruction. Because were they to stay in their classroom, the instruction that's happening in their classroom isn't moving at a fast enough pace, isn't at a high enough cognitive level, isn't challenging for them. So that's why we put them in with a gifted specialist. Now here, the content is going to change. They're not going to be doing the same content that would necessarily be happening in their classroom. They're going to be learning, they're going to be reading junior grade books. They're going to be using the College of William and Mary materials, which were specifically designed with gifted kids in mind. They're going to be learning Latin and Greek stems. They're going to be talking about 4-level grammar. All of those pieces that we know work well with gifted kids. This is where we start getting and needing that opportunity to interact there. They're going to need a faster pace in math. So they're going to need to work a year above grade level. Some of them more than a year above grade level. Now, we still have to continue that problem solving piece. We have to make sure that they have the state standards, which is one reason why in all of these classrooms, you'll see that daily on level review. And I have parents who reach out and go, okay, I don't understand. Why is my kid doing an on level review? Just because your child jumped over something doesn't mean that they don't still need that skill set. And I need to make sure that that skill set stays strong for them as they move forward. These are children who make beautiful intuitive jumps, and I love watching them jump. But here's the problem with an intuitive jump. Sometimes they jump over the top of a skill set that they're going to need at some point. And if as teachers, we don't find that jump and find that skill set, oftentimes it doesn't come back to bite them until they're years down the road, until they hit that honors geometry class. And we realize, oh, shoot, you don't have that little skill. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. I got called by a second grade teacher a number of years ago, and she said, Karen, I need you to come because I have 7 kids who all know how to do long division, and I don't teach long division in 2nd grade. So I need to know what to do with them. Right? Came to the classroom, I sat down, I was a gifted specialist, sat down with the kids, I'm on the floor, got my whiteboard, I write my long division problem on it, and I say to them, guys, what would you do first? 7 little blank faces are staring at me. I said, okay, can someone tell me, what do you do first? I got nothing. Now these kids aren't afraid of me, they know me, I've been in their classroom a lot. Finally, one of them looked at me and he said, Mrs. Brown, where are the choices? The choices, what do you, I don't understand, what do you mean? You know, like the A, B, C, the choices that you pick from. And I said, well, honey, we can solve this without choices. Okay, fine. So I wrote down some choices. I no sooner got the correct choice down than 7 little hands went up. And I said, so which one? C, it's C. I said, how do you know it's C? And the little girl looked at me and she said, Miss Brown, so here's how you work it. You take the first choice and you multiply it by this number. And if it doesn't come out to this number, that's not it. So then you go to the second choice and you multiply it by this number. And if that doesn't come out to this number, then that's not it. And you see how C, when you multiply, it comes out to that number? That's the right one. And one little boy looked at me and he went, and don't forget to tell her about the R. And I went, the R? He goes, if there's an R beside the number, that means that you're going to be close, but you're not going to be exact, and it's okay. Do they know how to do long division? No. Do they have a really good understanding of multiplication? Yes. But that's a splinter skill that would get created if somebody's not paying attention to the fact that, wait a minute, they made an intuitive jump. And based on the testing that they had done, long division had been checked off. They don't know how to do long division. They understand the philosophy behind long division, which is amazing, but they don't understand necessarily that process. So I said to them, well, do you realize that you can actually solve this problem without having any choices? You're kidding. How? And so I worked a long division problem for them. Can we do another one? Sure we can. We can do lots of them. This is cool. Yeah. But if they don't want to learn, it's that intuitive jump that sometimes gets in their way. So when we think about integrated reading, we want to make sure that we have 4 key elements to it. We want to make sure that we have that literary comprehension, that analysis. We want to make sure that we are providing them a very strong advanced vocabulary. We want to make sure that they're studying Latin and Greek STEM so that they're increasing their vocabulary exponentially. That grammar study enhances the way they utilize language. And lastly, the study of poetics and understanding the structures that are in poetry. These are some of the materials that we use. There's an example of a 4-level grammar sentence. I was putting together a 4-level grammar presentation, and my son, I have 4 boys, and if you are the mother of boys, you know that they come in herds. They don't come just 1 or 2 kids to your house. Herds of children come to your house. And so I had a herd at my house a particular day, and my son was looking over my shoulder and he said, "You're doing 4-level grammar." And I looked at him and I said, "How do you know about 4-level grammar?" "My teacher does it." Okay. So I'm going through it and he goes, "Just a minute." He yells to a couple of his friends, "Let's show my mom how to run the sentence." So they proceeded to work through the sentence for me. And this is a child who, if you gave him the option of, would you like to do 5 math problems or would you like to write a 5-sentence paragraph? He would grab the 500 math problems and run. And so when I said to him, you seem pretty comfortable with doing 4-level grammar. Well, yeah, we do a sentence every day. Then you don't get bored? Mom, it's a sentence, 1 sentence. How bored can you get with 1 sentence? Yeah, which is one reason why it works really well with these kids. So a lot of opportunities for us to expand and stretch their thinking. These are some of the novels that are included that we work with. The complete list can be found at the PVSchools literature link. Lots of different opportunities for them. Mathematical practices are a huge part of our math instruction. We need to make sure that they understand why they're doing what they're doing. Number sense is a huge component. Why does this work? My favorite homework assignment to give my kids is on Monday to give them a complex problem in the middle of the page with 4 empty boxes around it. I need you to solve this problem 4 ways and you may not use the algorithm. And invariably I would get a dad who would call and say, this can't be done without the algorithm. And my answer to him was, if you will wait till Friday, your child will explain to you. And the kids would work on it. And then we'd come back to school on Wednesday, they'd come in and I'd say, okay, how many of you found 1 way? How many of you found 2 ways? How many of you found 3 ways? Anybody got 4 ways? I said, okay, you've got 10 minutes to wander around and share your ways with each other. Because we're not going to look at this until Friday. And then we're going to start talking about all the different ways you found to solve it. I want to know, how deep is their understanding? Do they know how to use place value to figure this out? Do they know how to use estimation? Do they know how to model? Do they know how to look for structure? That's what I'm trying to find out. Because again, these kids can solve an algorithm right and left without understanding what they're doing. Then we have our comprehensive, self-contained, gifted curriculum. This is for students who need that radical acceleration. This is for a very, very small percentage of our gifted population. a very, very small percentage. These are kids who need to work 2, sometimes 3 years above grade level. Now they're going to get science and social studies at grade level, but it's not going to look the same because they're going to have gone much deeper into it. They're going to get that enrichment. They're going to get that enhancement, but they're going to get radical acceleration, which allows them to move very, very fast. Because it's what they need. They're working 2, some of them 3 years above grade level, depending on the subject area. We offer multi-age and single grade programs. Personally, I'm a huge fan of multi-age. Because I don't think of these children as first or second graders. I think of them as this child has this skill set and they are missing this skill set. And whether they're a first or a second grader isn't going to matter in how I group them. I'm grouping them based on what they don't have yet. Which means they're going to be all mixed up in my classroom anyways. And I had to laugh because when I had my 3rd and 4th graders, I had not really referred to them as 3rd and 4th graders. And someone came in to my classroom and they needed my 4th graders for something that they were doing. And they said, could all the 4th graders line up? And my kids just kind of sat there. And they looked at me and I said, I don't know which ones they are, just a minute. And so I called them by name and they were like, oh, okay. And they lined up. They'd been in a multi-age program and we didn't really call them by 3rd or 4th grade or 1st or 2nd grade. They were in a multi-age room. I love that. So lots of opportunities. This particular program starts the need for an application. When you're in a cluster room or content replacement, there is no application. You are a gifted learner, that's where you go. You're automatically placed in those types of programs. When we get to the comprehensive piece, that's where that application process starts. And the reason for that is simple. We have many students who have the scores needed to qualify to apply. That's all those scores do for you. They qualify you to apply for program. To qualify to apply, you need a 97 in 2 of the areas, verbal, nonverbal, or quantitative, with at least a 90 in the 3rd area. That qualifies you to apply. Doesn't mean you're going to be in the program. Means you're qualified to apply. Because then I'm going to look to see, is radical acceleration really what you need? Because right now we have some kids that have 99s across the board, and they are not in our comprehensive gifted programs because they don't need to be. It's not a good fit for them. They don't want radical acceleration. It's okay. They're doing fine. They'll be very successful. That's why that application is in place. I'm looking to see, is that the best place for this learner? So middle school opens up that multiple pathway. And we have many middle schoolers who choose to go to their home middle school. They'll go to Explorer, they'll go to Desert Shadows, they'll go to Shea. But we also have many children who need more of a specialized program. They still need that self-contained or semi-self-contained learning environment. And that's where the DLC and Journey come in. And these are 2 programs that offer them that opportunity to still be with that group of gifted kids and have that opportunity to move through content in a very different way, much more project-based, problem-based, personalized. Very different programs to really address their learning needs. In these programs, they are contained within a gifted environment for science, for social studies, and for their language arts. They go out for math because math is leveled by the time we get to middle school. So they might need algebra as a 7th grader. They might need geometry as a 7th grader. So that portion is pulled out of these particular programs to allow for that leveling to occur. Well, what about this kid? What about that twice exceptional learner? Because remember, you can't be gifted and have a disability. Really? A twice exceptional learner is simply a child who has some form of a disability that is preventing them from fully accessing their gifted abilities. In some cases, they're hard to identify because the disability is so strong that it masks their giftedness. Sometimes it goes the other way. Their giftedness is so strong that it masks the disability, and we don't realize until they're in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade that they can't do this. You see, that's what happened with my oldest child. He was flying through school, and he got to 3rd grade, and the 3rd grade teacher came to me and she said, he can't read. I said, I know, I've been telling people that for 3 years. She said, no, I'm serious. He can't read. I said, I know he can't read. Believe me, you're not telling me anything I don't know. He memorizes like crazy, but he's non-phonetic. And so in the system we were in, it's a very phonics-based system, and blending words made absolutely no sense to him. He's completely non-phonetic. But he has a 152 IQ. Well, then he can't have a reading disability. Well, I'm sorry, but he does. I'm sorry. He memorizes. And believe me, getting him through college was a real chore for me, because he would call me or he would text me. And the text would say, Mom, call my phone and say this word. Now, he was in a veterinary tech program. I can't say those words, they're huge. Luckily, I found a dictionary that will say those words, and I sent it to him. Said, you go for it. But understand that he had appeared just fine to people. What about that child with ADHD? Is that learner 2E? If they're gifted in ADHD, they are. Absolutely. What about that child with anxiety? Are they 2E? If that anxiety is to the point that they are not successful, you bet they are. So what do we do for these kids? Well, one of the things in Paradise Valley that we're doing right now is based off of the Aid for Arizona Expansion and Innovation Fund, which is a fund that we were very blessed to be able to get, which allows us to create training opportunities for teachers. Because you see, these children are in every single classroom. Every single classroom. Some are gifted identified, some are not gifted identified, some are special education identified, some are not special education identified, some are on 504s, some are not on 504s, but they're there. Which means that we need a teacher on every single campus who understands these kids. We need that 2E expert on every campus, which means we need to train that 2E expert on every campus. We need an early intervention program, which is what we'll be starting next year for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders. That gives us that early intervention opportunity for those that are really struggling. But in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and in 7th grade, and in 8th grade, we need teachers who understand what it means for these learners and the toolbox to support them, because they're everywhere. And the answer of, okay, well, you need to take those 2E students, you need to put them all together. I don't have a building big enough to put them all together. And that's not what they need. They need a teacher who understands them. We're also very lucky in that starting next year, I have a teacher who is highly skilled in working with 2E students, who will have early release she'll be half-time at her site, but then she'll also be half-time and can go to the different schools and support the teachers. And then I have our cluster coach as well as our gifted program mentor, who totally understand these kids and are willing to support teachers as we move forward in getting these kids what they need. Right now, we put Band-Aids on these kids. And we hope that the Band-Aid holds. We got to stop Band-Aiding. I don't need a Band-Aid on them. I need them to learn strategies so that they can succeed. Because they can. They are an amazing group of kids. They can succeed and they will succeed. But we have to be willing to put those strategies in place for them. So one of our goals is to make sure that we provide resources for parents that allow you that one-stop shop. We do it for teachers, we do it for principals, we also do it for parents. And the parent portal can be found on our Gifted website. This is the one-stop shop for you. It has all kinds of really valuable information for you. It has information about reading. If you want to see the gifted scope and sequence, if you want to know books that your kid might use, National Geographic and social studies, enrichment ideas for things that you could do, parenting tips, the gifted speaker series, all different things. Access to all of these places. Our goal is to make sure that we are providing what you need without having you go search and search and search and search. Because that's a real challenge. Okay. 3 people. I probably should have had Jesse's number up there too, because when you call the gifted office, Jessica's who you talk to. And I have a lot of parents who go, oh my gosh, she's amazing. She is amazing. But she's the one who answers the phone, and she's the one who directs you to where you need to be and can answer 90% of your questions. But we are here. Our job is to serve your child. And I say that because I used to say my job is to serve you. And then I realized that that's really not my job. My job is to serve your child. To make sure that your child is getting the very best that we have to offer. That's our job. And we take it very, very seriously. So I'm going to stop my presentation now. And I'm going to open it up for any questions that anyone has, because I'm happy to answer questions. We are probably going to stop recording at this point.